Hi, I'm Shuling. I'm the director of Unteachable. If you were ever my classmate in primary or secondary school, you would know that I was always the weakest student in my Chinese class. It was such a struggle, I remember. My friends would tease me and call me a banana. My teachers would make me stand up in front of the whole class to read passages out loud. And I remember it being such a traumatic and humiliating experience. And as the years went by and, as the material got harder and harder, I just understood less and less of what was going on in class and eventually decided to start skipping my Chinese classes altogether. But fortunately for me, the language of instruction, the main language of instruction in Singapore is English. And because of that, through rote memorization and through repetition, even though I never really connected with the material, I never really enjoyed going to classes, I was able to get by with mediocre grades, and just get through school that way. But when I turned 17, I went against the norm and decided to apply to study mass communication at Ngee Ann Polytechnic. And because I was able to choose the classes that I would take there, school just became a completely different experience for me, and I was so enthusiastic about going to class and putting 110% into my projects. And I just, looking back, I feel really lucky because of that motivation to learn. I ended up being able to graduate at the top of my class of 4,000 students, and I got a full ride scholarship to go study at Northwestern. I feel really lucky that I was able to experience the joy of learning in Polytechnic, and I often wonder why I didn't get that in my younger years in primary and secondary school. And I know also that if my language skills had been reversed, if I had been strong in Mandarin but weak in English, I think I would have had an even harder time in school getting through that. Which is why, when my friend Macy told me that she wanted to take this method that she had found in Mexico to work with students in Singapore who were struggling within the mainstream system to try and rekindle the natural love for learning, I was really, really excited to just document the process and hope that there would be some kind of educational change in Singapore. So when I was in the classroom and was able to follow the students for several years, from the time they were Sec 1 to when they graduated in Sec 4, I realized actually the students were really smart, they're really creative, and they have a strong desire to learn. It's just that within the really rigid system, students sometimes fall through the cracks. So I really hope that, parents and teachers who watch the film, that you'll see that, no student is unteachable, that students have a real desire to learn, and I hope that we can shift the focus further away from grades and more towards the love of learning. When we were making Unteachable, we weren't trying to focus on any particular teaching method, but rather the values behind tutorial relationships. When I think back to my own experience in primary and secondary school, I realized that the more I felt like a teacher cared for us, the harder I worked in their classes, which is why I really love that tutorial relationships focused a lot on relationship building between teachers and students and building strong relationships between students and their own classmates as well. Because through this empathy building process, you have a better understanding of what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. You see that everybody has something valuable to contribute. And I think it also helps to reduce the stigma associated with the labels of the streaming system in Singapore. Also, years later, I came across this study about how humans learn and retain information, and it was like this reverse pyramid graphic, right? So the traditional teaching methods of like of lectures and reading and audiovisuals, you retain about 15 to 5 to 20% of information, and then with discussion and with demonstration, it bumped it up to about 30 to 50%, and then hands-on practice would boost it up to about 75% retention rate. But right at the top with a 90% retention rate was teaching others. And that just reminded me of how brilliant tutorial relationships was when Macy was in the classroom encouraging students to be each other's tutors, because in teaching you really have to know the material so well. And that's something I am going to remember for life and apply to when I teach my own classes, and even at home when I'm raising my kid. And I hope that audience members will do the same. If you're a student who's feeling down about where you are or how you're doing in the mainstream system, know that no one is unteachable, that you are not a failure. It is the system that has failed you. There are multiple ways to achieve your dreams and to find happiness. And your grades do not define who you are or what you are worth. So when I was younger, my father was a biology teacher at Temasek Junior College, and I have vague memories of him sitting at home on the weekend with like stacks and stacks of papers of his students' homework to mark. And I didn't quite understand just how much it took to be a teacher at the time. But when I was making Unteachable, through those 7 years, I was able to kind of take a peek behind the scenes, and even had a chance to film closed-door teachers' meetings, and I would see how late they would stay behind after school to teach themselves tutorial relationships, for them to train students to be student tutors, and even in the discussions they have these like long debates on what was working and what wasn't working. And through the discussions, you could really feel just how much the students meant to them and how much they cared for the students. So much so that, when we finally premiered the film in 2019 and invited some of the students involved to come watch it on the big screen, they came to us afterwards and said, "Wow, I had no idea just how much our teachers truly cared for us." And it makes me happy that this was able to shine through the film. When I was a film student at Northwestern University, a filmmaker by the name of Maria Finizzo screened her documentary film, Mapping Stem Cell Research, Terra Incognita, in my class. And even though I understood very little about the controversial stem cell debate at that time, the film was able to draw me in and help me understand the issues and make me care for the people whose stories were being told. And it dawned upon me that it was possible to use my skills in filmmaking to do good at the same time. So that's when I decided to pursue a career in documentary filmmaking. When I graduated, I interned at Cartan Quinn Films, which has been making social issue documentaries for over 50 years here in Chicago. And that's where I learned the art of making films without the need for like fancy equipment like drones and gimbals and sliders. The focus was more on telling authentic, intimate, and ethical stories in very simple ways. And that's how Unteachable was made. Oftentimes it was just me in the classroom with a little camera with minimal intervention. And we didn't want to be like a news crew just parachuting in and filming for an hour and, getting soundbite here and a soundbite there. We wanted to build relationships with the people whose stories we're trying to tell, and basically film over a long period of time and involving the people in the editorial process as well. That was the way in which we decided to make Unteachable.